He had always believed that history was supposed to be honest, that it was supposed to tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was. But when it came to the story of black soldiers, history did something different. It closed its eyes, turned the page, and pretended that some chapters never existed. Yet the truth remained, alive in hidden reports, buried letters, forgotten photographs, and the memories of men who fought bravely long before their country ever planned to honor them. This is the story of how black soldiers earned respect through fire and blood, and how that chapter was almost erased. It begins long before the world even knew what World War I would look like. It begins in a country where freedom was supposed to mean equality, but equality lived only on paper. Black men walked American streets knowing they were seen as less than citizens and sometimes less than human. Yet they still carried a loyalty to the land they called home. They worked farms, railroads, factories, and docks. They built the wealth of a nation that barely acknowledged them. And when war storms started brewing in Europe, they carried something else, too: hope. Even if hope felt fragile. Many believed serving in the military would be the key to proving something that should never have needed proving: their worth, their intelligence, their bravery, and their humanity. They thought that wearing a uniform could finally force America to look in the mirror and see its sons equally. The country, however, did not see them that way. Not yet. But war has a strange way of revealing the truth, and soon the world would discover what these men were capable of. When Europe erupted into chaos, America watched from a distance. Nations fell into trenches, artillery fire shook the earth, and entire towns were swallowed by smoke. Black communities in America followed the news with mixed emotions. Some feared being drafted by a country that didn't protect them. Others saw an opportunity to rewrite their place in American society. They wished for a chance to show courage in a moment when the world desperately needed it. When the United States finally entered the war in 1917, black men stepped forward in numbers that surprised even the military. They volunteered before being asked. They lined up at recruitment stations. They signed their names with pride, even though no one applauded them. They weren't naive. They knew they would face discrimination, unfair assignments, and the harshest duties. But they also knew that history was watching, whether America admitted it or not. But as soon as they joined, they learned the truth. America didn't plan to let them fight. Black recruits were often given torn uniforms, worn-out shoes, and leftover supplies. They trained with wooden sticks instead of rifles because real weapons were saved for white troops. Officers treated them as if they had no skill or intelligence. Some were assigned to clean stables, dig latrines, or load trucks, not because they lacked ability, but because racism ranked higher in the American Army than strategy. They were told they were unfit for combat, unfit for weapons, unfit for anything beyond labor. Yet even through humiliation, they trained harder than anyone. They ran farther, carried heavier loads, memorized drills with unmatched accuracy. They believed that discipline itself was a weapon, and they sharpened it every day. Slowly, quietly, they built themselves into something the world had never seen before, a force that could no longer be ignored. Across the ocean, France was fighting for survival. Entire villages disappeared under artillery rain. Cities were torn apart. The French army was exhausted, bleeding, desperate, and overwhelmed. They needed help, and they were willing to accept help from anyone who could actually fight. When the U.S. military refused to allow black troops into combat units, the French army made a different decision. They welcomed them. This single choice changed history. Black soldiers were handed real rifles, real ammunition, and real missions. They were given proper uniforms, proper rations, and proper respect. The French commanders didn't care about the color of their skin. They cared about whether they could fight. And those men, those forgotten men, were about to show the world exactly what they were made of. The moment they stepped into the trenches, everything changed. They saw war in its rawest, cruelest form. The ground shook every few minutes from exploding shells. Rats crawled across sleeping soldiers. The stench of mud and death hung in the air like fog. But these men did not crumble. They stood tall. They adapted fast. They fought with a level of courage that impressed even battle-hardened French officers. They were sent into some of the most dangerous positions along the front line, not because they were underestimated, but because the French recognized their discipline, strength, and endurance. These men held trenches that others had abandoned. They advanced through forests so dark and thick that sunlight struggled to break through. They marched into enemy fire with a calm focus that came from years of being forced to fight for basic dignity. The battlefield was cruel, but it was honest. It did not lie. It did not care about race. And in that honesty, these men finally felt they had a fair chance. The moment of transformation, the moment when respect began to change, came during a night so black it felt as if the sky itself was mourning. Smoke drifted across the fields like wandering ghosts. Far in the distance, German artillery lit up the horizon with bright flashes. Orders came down: hold the line at all costs. Reinforcements were not guaranteed. Retreat was not an option. Many believed they wouldn't survive the night. The attack came fast. German forces stormed the trenches with heavy firepower, confident they could break through. But the black regiments stood their ground. They fought with intensity, with precision, and with a deep understanding that this battle was more than a military moment. It was a chance to prove their worth to the world. Machine gun fire cut through the air. Grenades exploded around them. Soldiers were thrown into the mud. But still, they fought. Even when outnumbered, even when the enemy expected them to fall. They refused to bow. France took note. So did Germany. The German army became so frustrated by their resilience that they wrote a warning memo to their own troops. Avoid direct engagement with these units because they fought like devils. This wasn't praise meant for public eyes. It was a fear-filled caution sent through enemy lines. That alone speaks volumes. For the first time, an entire foreign nation respected Black American soldiers more than their own country did. Yet, even after surviving brutal combat, even after earning medals from the French army, they returned home to humiliation. No parades, no welcome banners, no celebrations. White soldiers were praised as heroes. Black soldiers were told to stay in their place. Some cities even forbade them from wearing their uniforms in public. The insult cut deeply. These men had shed blood for the same flag that now asked them to live silently. They had saved villages in France that treated them better than their own hometowns. They had survived enemy fire only to return to a nation filled with its own battles: segregation, discrimination, and systemic hate. Yet they didn't break. Their strength wasn't built in the comfort of equality. It was forged through hardship. And the more society tried to silence them, the more determined they became to speak. After the war, many Black veterans became powerful voices in the fight for civil rights. They carried themselves with a dignity that could not be shaken. They had seen the world. They had seen respect on foreign soil. They knew what equality looked like because they lived it, even if briefly. They knew they deserved that same respect at home. These veterans challenged unfair laws. They demanded justice. Their courage behind the front lines fueled courage on the streets back home. They didn't just return as soldiers, they returned as leaders. But the erasure began quickly. Official military reports downplayed their victories. Photographs were mislabeled or hidden. Textbooks omitted their role entirely. Even monuments that should have carried their names were built without them. America wanted to celebrate the war, but not the contributions of black men who helped win it. That erasure wasn't an accident. It was a decision. Yet history has a way of resurfacing when truth refuses to die. Over time, historians discovered diaries, letters, and forgotten military files. They found French awards stored in tiny boxes in attics. They found newspaper clippings from European towns thanking black regiments for saving their families. Every record they uncovered painted the same picture. These soldiers were heroes. As the years passed, their story began to return to the light. Not all at once. Slowly, quietly, but steadily. Schools started teaching small pieces of their journey. Documentaries shared fragments of their courage. Museums opened sections dedicated to their contributions. People around the world learned that World War I was not just a story of nations. It was a story of men whose voices had been silenced. But their legacy extends far beyond history books. Every black soldier who serves today stands on the foundation built by those who fought through fire and blood more than a century ago. Their sacrifices opened doors. Their bravery forced the military to evolve. Their insistence on dignity reshaped the way America viewed its own strength. The most powerful lesson their story teaches is that respect is not always given. Sometimes it must be earned through struggle. And sometimes, even after earning it, it must be fought for again and again. These soldiers did both. They didn't just serve a nation. They changed it. They didn't just fight a war. They reshaped what courage looked like. They didn't just survive discrimination. They transformed it into fuel. Their story matters because it reveals something deeper about human spirit. When a person believes in their dignity, no force, not guns, not hatred, not erasure, can silence that truth forever. These men refused to disappear, even when textbooks buried them, even when politics dismissed them, even when society told them to stay quiet. Their stories lived on in the families they saved overseas, in the medals they earned through grit, and in the memories archived by those who cared enough to preserve the truth. Today, the world knows the truth. The chapter that was erased has been rewritten, and now it belongs to all of us. It belongs to anyone who believes in courage, in justice, and in honoring those who built the path we stand on. And if this story moved you, if it opened your eyes, then you know what to do. This is not just a channel. It is a mission to restore erased history, to bring forgotten heroes back into the light, and to make sure their sacrifices are never overlooked again. So hit that like button to push this truth forward. Subscribe so you don't miss the next hidden chapter we uncover. Drop a comment sharing which part shocked you most, or tell us the next story you want revealed. And share this video with someone who needs to understand that Black history is not a footnote. It is the backbone of countless victories, countless freedoms, and countless moments that shaped the world. They tried to erase these soldiers. They tried to silence them. But now, through your voice, through your curiosity, and through this community, they rise again. Their courage will be remembered. Their strength will be honored. And their legacy will never fade. This is the chapter they erased. But now, we write it back, together.